Dear ABC 27 News, does anyone care about vets anymore? My name is Paul Rhonda. I'm an honorably discharged vet, having served in Iraq and Afghanistan. My dreams after the military were small. Own a small travel trailer and a plot of land to park it on. When I purchased a seller-financed piece of land in Steelton is where it all went wrong. This is my story, if you care to hear it. It started when the seller refused to sign over the property. My first thought was to contact the authorities. I took a pre-written statement with me to visit Steelton Police Department. It read as follows. My name is Paul Rhonda. I am a disabled veteran living on a fixed income. I currently reside in Steelton, PA. Statement of facts and personal narrative. July 31st, 2019, I purchased a parcel of land in Steelton at 331 South 3rd Street from a man I met via Craigslist, Mr. Jason Snellbaker. I paid $500 down and the seller financed the rest at 12% interest over 5 years. I had been receiving handwritten receipts until we began using Cash App. June 22nd, 2022. I received a text message from Mr. Snellbaker which read as follows. This is Jason. The guy sold you your land in Steelton. I called him back and we spoke briefly. He was doing some renovations on 2 homes he had bought at auction and needed general labor. I agreed to $15 an hour paid daily and commenced work. July 1st, 2022. I was about to make my monthly payment when Mr. Snellbaker proposed a trade. We settled on 200 hours of labor for the remaining balance on my property, which at the time was $2,300. I requested Wednesdays off because I help run a local food pantry in Steelton, and Sunday mornings I would be attending church services. With ample witnesses and GPS data clocking my work hours, I never imagined he would attempt to go back on his word. Even so, around the 21st of July, we had a conversation at site number 1, 1836 Park, regarding already being over my 200 allotted hours. He refused to sign over the property and pressured me to work for 10 more days. I relented and continued for 3 more days at that site before work commenced at another property in York, 344 West Gas Avenue, site number 2, on August 3rd. It was at that point all communication ceased. Not wishing to give him any excuse, I rode up with the painters he was using and proceeded to work an additional 4 days on August 19, 20, 21, and 22. It was at this point he stopped work, claiming a heavy presence by code enforcement. No attempt was ever made to contact me after that. The next communication was on September 20th. Mr. Snellbaker called me, and after some formalities, I asked him if he had time to sign the deed over. He stated that he no longer felt it was worth it and offered to give me 6 months of credit, $720 for my labor, and simply asked when I would like to resume payments. I told him $3 an hour was outlandish and asked to discuss the matter in person. He immediately started acting evasive and said he couldn't meet now or the next day. We settled on the day after that, Thursday, September 22nd. I informed him the painter and I had left some tools at the Park Street site and would like to meet there. He agreed, and I told him I would call the next day to confirm, which I did for 5 p.m. Additionally, I contacted him to confirm on the 22nd in the morning and prior to arrival. September 22nd, 2022. At 5 p.m., I arrived at 1836 Park and texted Mr. Snellbaker. He called me back stating he didn't live there anymore. I reminded him about the tools I wanted to retrieve, but he claimed no knowledge of any tools or the brief conversation we had had. I decided to forego my tools and asked if he now wished for me to take an Uber to his primary residence or do this the next day. Neither would suffice, and he stated we would be handling the matter now. I persisted and simply said I would prefer to do this in person. To which he replied, I don't give an F what you want. It was at this point that I hung up the phone, since the conversation had quickly deteriorated. September 23rd, 2022. I gave Mr. Snellbaker some time to cool off and sent him a text message the following day. It read, Jason, I don't know what's going on, but we had an agreement. 200 hours of labor for the deed to my property. I upheld my end of the bargain. I expect you to do the same. I don't want to have to escalate this with litigation. Please reconsider what you're trying to do. Paul. After almost 2 hours, he responds, You are in default, per our agreement, which explicitly states seller has the right to resell the property. I immediately respond, Why do you consider me to be in default? No text messages were exchanged after that point. Mr. Snellbaker attempted to contact me the following day, but seeing no likelihood of a civil conversation, I directed the call to Google voicemail. No message was left. At this point, I would like to see Jason Snellbaker investigated and ultimately prosecuted. In addition to the outright theft of my tools and the painter's tools, I feel he is guilty of a host of other crimes. Theft of service for attempting to pay me less than the agreed upon amount, extortion for withholding the deed and making me work 10 more days, usury for charging an illegal interest rate. Private lenders are capped at 6% per annum, which he charged 12%. Illegal retention of property over $2,000 for attempting to keep the deed. Jason Snellbaker is a predator and has acted with impunity within the borders of Dauphin County as well as York for years, taking advantage of the most vulnerable members of our society, people who bought a meager piece of land in the hopes of one day building a home. If he can do this as someone who's met his wife and been in his home, then I can only imagine how many people he's fleeced on Craigslist over the years. I wish no further contact with Jason Snellbaker outside of a courtroom. He is loud, belligerent, and tends to carry a weapon. Jason Snellbaker poses a risk to the personal safety and welfare of the community at large. As such, I would like to resolve this matter in a timely fashion, out of an abundant concern for my own personal well-being. Please let me know what, if anything, can be done about this blight upon our community. Thank you for your time and consideration in this matter. Sincerely, Paul Aranda. Although the officer who took my statement asked if I wanted him to call Jason, I declined, hoping to get the chief alerted to the situation. I returned the next day and submitted a right-to-know request, simply to see if the chief had read the statement. The chief himself took my paperwork and filed it somewhere before returning to lunch. After Steelton PD, I kept trying. I contacted legal aid, who informed me they don't handle this type of case. Contacted the DA, but never received a call back. Harrisburg police wouldn't even take my statement, simply informing me that civil crimes are not the responsibility of the police. Spoke with state police, who decided it was not their jurisdiction. Tried to appeal to my local district judge, only to be dismissed by the office staff and told this is not something they handle. Although a lawyer assured me it was. During all this, I attempted to appeal to my local borough council and the mayor for help. At a borough council meeting, I would go on to read my statement, only to be met with silence when I finished speaking. Nothing was said in response, and the council moved on to the next public comment. I returned to my seat where I was sitting behind the chief of police and the chief of the fire department. Neither one turned around to speak to me. I tapped the chief of the fire department on the shoulder and handed him an article about the man I was dealing with. North York landlord who police say lit gas lines like a candle to serve prison time. This is from the York Daily Record. Jason Snellbaker, 45, of North York, pleaded guilty on Monday to recklessly endangering another person. He must serve 7 to 23 months in York County Prison. A landlord who police said lit gas lines inside his tenant's home on fire in a move that could have blown up the neighborhood will serve 7 to 23 months in York County Prison. Jason Snellbaker, 45, of North York, pleaded guilty on Monday to recklessly endangering another person. He made the decision right before his trial was set to begin in front of Common Pleas Judge Michael E. Bortner. Prosecutors either withdrew or agreed to drop the remaining charges: 3 counts of arson, 2 counts of criminal attempt to commit arson, and 1 count of risking a catastrophe. My client was probably looking at state prison, said Tom Kelly, Snellbaker's attorney. I'm satisfied. On January 19, 2016, York City Fire Rescue Services were called to a home on Jefferson Avenue, near North Beaver Street. Firefighters discovered that 2 gas lines, one in the laundry room, one in the basement, were on fire. Snellbaker told investigators that he had disconnected the lines and lit them like a candle to have heat in the house, York City police said. The electricity had been turned off, police said, and he didn't care about anything other than the pipes in the house freezing. Snellbaker maintained that what he did was not dangerous. Police said in an interview, Snellbaker said he regretted pleading guilty, adding that he was trying to help out his tenant. Law enforcement, he said, included a bunch of lies in court documents. He called it an awful, awful, wicked thing. It's just such an awful experience, he said. It's the worst 2 years of my life. Deputy Prosecutor Deirdre Sullivan said outside the courtroom that she extended the plea agreement after consulting with police and firefighters. Snellbaker said she took responsibility for the crime. She said, took responsibility for the crime and agreed to serve the rest of the time that prosecutors had been seeking. When you go to a jury trial, there's always a chance the jury will accept the defense's arguments instead of your theory of the case and find the defendant not guilty, Sullivan said. Snellbaker will get credit for 119 days that he previously spent locked up. He must report to York County Prison on December 29th. He took it, read that article, and continued looking forward. Not a word was said to me. After the meeting concluded, the mayor immediately departed and would not acknowledge me or my situation. I never truly expected anyone to do anything, but to be so callously ignored was shocking. I still held out hope that when the minutes were posted online, maybe someone would get involved. I even tried to file a property dispute, a lis pendens, myself, at the Protho Notary, When I arrived, I was informed they didn't have a standard form and didn't know what was included on it, but I could Google it. After some research, I returned, only to be told it didn't matter because they were still unsure what went into one. At which point, I was directed to the law library to research it myself. Realizing at this point I would need to retain legal representation to defend myself, I was forced to return to work. After gaining employment and receiving my first paycheck, I contacted a lawyer, met Evans in Woodside. They took my case and a $1,000 retainer. A month later, they would call and say they can't represent me after all. They did in fact have a conflict and offered to refund me $810 since some work had already been done. After I complained about getting charged for work they weren't legally allowed to do anyway, I was refunded my full amount. They finished by providing me with the numbers of 2 other lawyers and an apology. I wasn't thrilled about taking further advice of a lawyer who had wasted a month of my time and even misspelled the word dispute in the first sentence of our engagement letter. In the meantime, I continued to attend city council meetings since the minutes had suspiciously stopped being posted online, and I was adamant about making this a public matter. When the minutes were eventually posted, I found my statement full of omissions, paraphrasing, and outright lies crafted to present a narrative that presented me as disruptive. After that, my physical health started to deteriorate, and my mental health took a nosedive. I'll spare you the details, but I barely left my room over the past few months, being unable to stand, sit, or lie down without being in intense pain. I don't consider myself to be weak, but you don't have to be weak to feel defenseless. So I just gave up. Elected officials I thought would offer support turned their back on me. Could have called another lawyer, but I didn't have it in me anymore. My confidence was shattered and I felt utterly defeated. Then yesterday it happened. I got a call from a neighbor saying some random people were walking around my lot. It seems Jason has decided to sell the property again. The individuals I spoke with didn't seem to care about my situation and let me know they would be signing the deed into their name on Tuesday, and I had until then to remove my car from the property. Is this what I went to war for? To be dismissed? Taken advantage of at every turn? So, ABC 27 News. Please let me know if you can help shine a light on my dilemma and our shared struggle to defend our rights. If you feel there is nothing you can do, then just enjoy 4th of July weekend. Be sure to thank a veteran for their service. Thanks for listening. Sincerely.